Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm John Harrington, the editor of PRWeek UK, and I'm joined today by PRWeek reporter Eliza Wiredu and our special guest, Kamiqua Lake. Cam is the CEO and founder of Calder, the strategic marketing, PR and comms consultancy, and is also the founder of the Black Comms Network, which aims to increase the seniority of Black PR and comms professionals in the UK. Welcome, Cam. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Eliza.
Pleasure. Though the Black Comms Network has been working with PRWeek and Opinium to survey Black PR professionals about their experiences of the industry. We had 170 responses in total, and we've been running the findings on PRWeek all this week. So before we start delving into this, I want to give a quick plug. One way agencies can show they're serious about running more inclusive workplaces is by taking part in the Pay Gaps project from PRWeek and people like us. Find out more at prweek.com. Okay, so let's start with some background. This is the third instalment of the annual survey. What are the reasons for launching these surveys in the first place? What's the kind of background to these initiatives?
So Black Comms started in 2020 off the back of a WhatsApp group, which had about 40 Black PR and comms pros in it. And I really, in sort of 2019, 2020, wanted to understand how and if the UK was ready for a network, what that might look like. And we also wanted to drive some change because in this WhatsApp group, people were sharing all of their challenges and all the difficulties they were having in the industry. And so, whilst we know our experiences as Black comms professionals, we know our industry is obsessed with data. And so, we thought, let's understand a bit more about these experiences and get under the skin of what's going on across kind of broader than the people that we know, but across the kind of Black comms experience more broadly across the industry. We really wanted to understand more. So the data was really just about quantifying the experience. And whenever we've shared these surveys with our members, we always say it's just putting numbers to the experiences we know you're having so that people can really understand where we need to focus and agencies and companies can understand what we need to do to really make a difference.
So looking at the main findings, one thing that really stood out to me was 2/3 of Black comms professionals have considered leaving the PR industry. That number is much higher than the previous year. Why do you think the figure is so high? And have you noticed things getting significantly worse, or have you seen any frustration in the industry?
I mean, I've been in the PR and comms industry for like 20 years next year, and I'd be lying if I said I'd never considered leaving. We know it's a difficult job. There are lots of challenges across the board. And I think if anyone reading the kind of headlines from any sort of background would probably agree that they might have had that thought. I think what makes the difference here and why we're seeing the jump is one thing that 2020 did, it really sort of highlighted the experiences of Black professionals. People understood a bit more that actually maybe what I'm experiencing isn't just normal. Actually, I don't really like a lot of these things that are going on. I also think that they really started to think about and question whether they wanted to be in the industry or not. But the hyper visibility wasn't there. I think now we're in a place where there's a bit more expectation. So what we keep hearing is we're 4 years on. A lot of these kind of issues have been highlighted before across different sectors, including ours. A lot of people have talked about what they're doing differently. Companies have talked about what they're going to do. And a lot of that isn't happening. So I think it's born out of some of that frustration and really thinking with everything else I need to deal with, life is hard enough as it is already. The industry is hard enough as it is already. Do I want to be somewhere where I don't feel like I belong? I think also what we've seen is increasing visibility of Black-owned businesses and Black PR agencies. And I think it's increasingly looking more attractive to set up on your own. So I think the combination of those factors means that people are probably more seriously considering whether they want to set up, which I don't necessarily think of as leave the industry, but whether they want to set up on their own or whether they want to leave the industry altogether.
Is that the reason why you decided to set up Calder?
It was one of the reasons. I set up Calder in the pandemic, and one of the reasons why I set it up was I'd never seen a Kamiqua on an audience profile. So it was more for me about the work. It was that the work didn't seem to reflect London, didn't seem to reflect different experiences. And I think that's the thing that diverse teams bring is different experiences and different perspectives. So I really wanted to challenge the industry to do that. And I thought, why don't I try it? Let me see if it works. And I'm glad to say 4 years on, we're still here. So it was definitely one of the reasons. And I do think It's something I'm going to talk about a bit more, but I think I have different challenges now. I'm a business owner, but in a lot of ways, I feel like I've got more privilege because I know the experiences that everyone's having, but I don't have it on a day-to-day basis. Because I've got a diverse team, I'm not experiencing the microaggressions. If something goes on in the news or happens externally for Black communities, I'm not having odd conversations or have people ignore that experience or having weird small talk around it when I'm in the office. So there's a lot to be said around having that freedom to just be when you own an agency and when you can build a culture that means people feel more comfortable depending on what background they're from.
Really interesting insights. Thank you. I mean, one thing that struck me about the research was the lack of transparency in pay and progression opportunities seems to be a real problem here. It's something that's not really improving either. Around 1 in 3 respondents said their company is transparent on pay and career progression, and that was down from 50% in the survey from 2022. So it's quite a downward trajectory. And it looks like a lack of promotion opportunities is a real issue, as I say. So how much of a problem do you think this is when it comes to lack of diversity overall in comms?
It is a massive problem. And when we launched the survey, the first one in 2020, and we said half of people weren't getting promoted or have never been promoted, it has enormous knock-on effects for Black talent, not only because they are almost forced to move to another company to get a promotion. So their CVs look quite different. And oftentimes hiring managers could look on that less favorably in terms of not necessarily staying in one position for a long time. But also this piece around progression means that we often have high paid people but in junior positions because people are offered more pay but not necessarily offered the promotion, which is the gateway to the senior position. So they're not trusted to be the only person that's in a room with a client. They're not trusted to lead an account. They're only trusted in those sorts of positions if it's an account that talks to their community. Then that knowledge becomes so much more valuable. And from my first-hand experience, I can't say exactly, but I know that if I hadn't sort of set up Colder, I wouldn't be in the rooms that I'm in now. I wouldn't be able to just be, talking to senior clients to lead big campaigns if I was in a big agency, because you're just not trusted to be in that position.
That's really interesting. So the lack of representation is another issue the survey identified. So what the survey said is 3 in 4 respondents identified a lack of representation in the leadership teams as the biggest barrier to progression. They say you can't be what you can't see. Do you think the survey suggests this is a significant barrier?
I think there's lots of different things going on here. I think there's one part, just generally within the industry, not everybody's trying to get to the senior position. Some people just want a really good job that pays them well so they can live the life that they want. And then on the other side, you've got people that do desire to be senior, do want to go all the way, do want to effectively run a PR or comms business. And I think that there is a lack of senior leaders who are Black. And I think it's different for different communities where, you might be more likely to see people from other backgrounds in senior positions. And certainly when we have conversations, we've got like WhatsApp group communities for our kind of emerging talent, like our junior members of like Black comms. And it's really disheartening for them when they can't see someone that looks like them. It makes them feel that actually, is it even possible? And even that headline around people leaving the industry, again, was really disheartening for some of our kind of emerging talent. Like they are looking to kind of senior talent to be like, actually, that's what I want to do. This is how I'm going to model my career. I might not follow the exact same path, but I do know that it's possible if I want to be the senior person, the most senior person in the room.
Yeah, no, it's a really important point, isn't it? And I guess coming on from that is cultural barriers that seem to exist. And I think the survey picks up on quite a few of these. Some of the worrying data that I was looking at, 67% of the respondents said they needed to tone down their personalities, in quote, as new hires to fit into the work environment. That was up from 56% in 2022. And a similar proportion say they have code switched when applying for comms roles. Code switching basically involves consciously or unconsciously adjusting your behaviour, accent or language to conform to the dominant social norms. As I say, quite sort of worrying findings, I think. What sort of lessons do you take from those sorts of findings?
I completely understand. I definitely used to do it when I was more junior. I think there is also something in, as you become more senior in a role, you find yourself and you're slightly more comfortable being you. And I think there were certainly some anecdotes where people said, I'm kind of myself, whatever the weather. But I do think that it's really important that people can be. And the reason why I always struggle to understand why we don't do it better in our industry is we are all about people and culture. We talk about culture all of the time. We talk about reaching people and reaching audiences all of the time. So why not start with your team and your staff? Why not start with really understanding the people that you work with day in and out? Why not start with making it comfortable for them? We talk about delivering messages. We talk about understanding people. And so if there's any industry that should be leading the way in connecting, understanding, creating safe places, allowing people to be themselves, I really think it should be our industry that does that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something we were talking about earlier, actually, that it feels like more generally in society, or some organisations, some companies are kind of kicking back a bit against DE&I. We've heard a few sort of stories from big companies in the States, particularly with this, but it does feel like even if that is happening, I don't think the comms industry can use that as any guide to what's acceptable and what's desirable. I totally agree. We need to be the ears and the eyes on the outside world, don't we? And be really on the pulse of culture. And if we don't get this sort of stuff, then we never will be.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that I just don't understand it. Like, diversity is front and center of what we do at Calder, but it's because we hire for difference. I get excited by having someone who's different to me on the team. And until we're in a place where more agencies get excited by difference and not just always wanting to hire the kind of cookie cutter PR, everyone's version of the PR star probably looks quite similar. I think until we really break the mold with that and we get excited by people with different perspectives who live from different places, who've grown up differently, until you get excited by that, I really can't understand how we're gonna change things. But for me, that's what's worked. I don't do blind CVs, for example, because I'm like, I want to see where you went to school. Because actually, if you went to school to a slightly different place or outside of London, that's interesting to me. You've got a different experience. So I think it is, I know not necessarily to go into tips, but it is about really getting excited by difference. And also it's attitudinal change, not just process change. It's not just putting a process in place because it makes sense. It's like, actually, what do we value as a company? What makes a difference for us as a team? And how much of that is led by having different people who actually feel welcome and comfortable to come into the office all day, or to be on a Teams call or a Zoom call and feel comfortable.
More than 4 in 5 Black PR professionals have experienced microaggressions in the workplace. What forms can these take, and why are these so harmful?
It's harmful because it's the 1,000 cuts analogy. Like, I was at an award ceremony the other day, which shall remain nameless, and it was afterwards, and everybody was sort of celebrating and having fun, or having drinks, should I say. And I had my hair in braids, and somebody came up to me and started touching my hair, and it still happens basically. And I just would never do that. I just don't understand why you would touch someone, especially if you don't know them. You would just touch their hair. I know that our, braids look great, etc., etc. So I think that they still happen all the time, and I think we're more aware that they're happening, and therefore you're more likely to notice and be quite annoyed or upset, or you might have had that happen to you 3 or 4 times that week. And there's death by 1,000 cuts. It's the little things that don't make you feel at home or feel like you want to come into the office. I've heard people talking about, well, I'm the only Black person in my team. And I know how important it is to connect with my team, but the office is just not a comfortable space when we have our kind of office days, because I'm just othered. I feel different. And that difference isn't celebrated or, not valued in the office. So I think microaggressions are really harmful. They are subtle and indirect forms, sometimes unintended forms of racism. But just because they're unintended doesn't mean that it hurts or doesn't, bother anyone any less. And I think we do really need to get to grips with some of these things, so that people feel more comfortable in the workplace.
I mean, you sort of touched on it a little bit earlier on, but I'm quite interested to get your views on the sort of positive things that you've seen, maybe managers, agency and in-house comms leaders, things that they've done that have impressed you when it comes to being more inclusive. Are there any sort of policies or approaches that you've seen that you think are a bit of a model for leaders in the industry?
I think there's lots of different things. I think sometimes there's not always opportunity. Like, promotion is one of those things, for example, where, there's not space for everybody at the top. But sometimes there are, I was on the PRCA board, and that was because a few people stepped down and made space because the PRCA recognised that it needed more diverse leaders on the board. Those people didn't lose out, they became fellows. So sometimes there are opportunities to make space. And I think where there are those opportunities to just make space and take that sort of quick, strong action, more agencies and leaders need to do those sorts of things. I think it's about listening to understand. And I think sometimes we sit in these rooms and people don't know what they just need to understand versus what they need to drive action around. And then people end up not doing anything because they're scared to offend. But I think if they actually listen to the one or two, there are some agencies that have 10 to 15 kind of Black team members, but a lot of agencies have a couple. If they listened to those few people and really understood what it would take to make the difference, I'm sure they could do it. And that might just be things like creating slightly safer places, or thinking about what are some of the actions and things that people are doing in the office that are making their lives more challenging or difficult. So when we're talking about microaggressions, and then it is things like having more equity, which is about what is the training that you need if you're from a different background, or if you live outside of London, what adjustments do we need to make? Or if your lived experience, is X, Y, Z. So it's not actually thinking of anything that differently. It's stuff that for me, comms people, PR people are very skilled at doing. And we've just got to get over the hump of not doing anything about these things. We have conversations all the time. We have to influence. We have to engage clients from different backgrounds. And you do see it when it's a client. People make slightly more effort because it's about the bottom line. So why are we not making the same effort when it's about talent from different backgrounds that we work with every day?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. It feels like, this industry should be experts at sort of adjusting culture and being attuned to what's normal and what needs to change and so on, and what you need to do to be as welcoming and as progressive as possible. So yeah, totally.
There's skills that we already have. And especially if we're internal comms communicators, it is about talking to different people and getting different people on side. So I think it's about not looking at diversity and inclusion in isolation. There's no need to be overly worthy around it. It's essentially about people and what are people's needs and what are people's wants. You're not going to be able to satisfy them all, but do you even understand them in the first place? There could be some really simple things that you could do to make the difference.
So if you had one piece of advice for senior industry figures, what would it be?
It would be to read the report. It is there in black and white. We've asked the same questions. We cover the same topics around culture, around progression and pay. And actually, if you make the difference for this audience, you make the difference for everyone. Because there are some things in here that no matter what your background is, these are going to be challenges for you. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that you can't be afraid to try new things. It's got to be really, really important for you to test and learn what's right for your organization. What's great for Calder is not going to work for a big integrated comms agency that isn't born out of making sure they're doing things in an inclusive way. It's going to look different. And I think it's also about consulting experts, like where you don't know, just like where we don't know with other, if we're doing a piece of work or doing an execution and we're not the experts in it and we get someone else in, get the experts in who can.
Fantastic advice and great insights. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Thank you, Cam, for spending your time with us, and obviously for working with us, sort of led by you, and obviously working with Opinium as well on the report. So I echo what you say. I think everyone should take a look at it and reflect on the findings and do what you need to do to change. So yeah, thank you for taking part today.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Eliza. And yeah, thank you to PRWeek for supporting us on this project alongside Opinion. We really appreciate it.
Great. Well, thanks again. I'm going to end with a bit of a plug again, as I started for the PRWeek People Like Us Pay Gaps project. So do check out prweek.com for information on that. Thanks again to Cam, to Eliza, and to everyone else for listening. If you've enjoyed today's episode, we'd love it if you could leave a review, please, wherever you access PRWeek's Beyond the Noise podcast. Until next time, goodbye.